Welcome back to Too Much Future. This is the show about the Fallout games, and we talk about, I'm Cameron.
Hey, Cameron. It's me, Dark and Gritty Michael.
Oh my god, Dark and Gritty Michael. Let's see here. So, let me try to do a little bit of a thing here. So, Dark and Gritty Michael, do you know normal Michael?
Yes, he's my cousin.
Michael Prime? Michael Prime is your cousin. Okay. Do you know Cowboy Michael?
He's also my cousin.
Okay, give me 1 second. I'm going to see if I can talk to Home on the Range.
Well, howdy.
Okay. All right. Cowboy Michael, you got to help me out here. How did Dark and Gritty Michael appear?
Well, that's an awful funny question you ask, Cameron. I would say that Dark and Gritty Michael, who is my cousin, by the way, often appears when things turn dour and humorless for no reason.
Got it. So I get what you're saying. So maybe, let me bring him back. Okay, you ready?
All right, then.
Bye, Cowboy Michael. What's in the box? What's in the box?
You don't want to know what's in the box.
Okay, I knew it. I knew that would do it. Dark and Gritty Michael, why are you here?
I'm here because we're going to talk about something that's dour and humorless.
Are you talking about Dead Money, the first piece of downloadable content for Fallout New Vegas?
That's exactly what I'm talking about, buddy.
No, it sounds like you just turned into Michael Prime here. Is that Michael Prime?
Yeah. Hi. I just I had to go get my coffee, and sorry, you started recording without me.
Yeah. Well, so we played Dead Money, Michael, and you sent me. Hold on. Let me see if I can scroll up here a little bit here. Let me scrolling up here. You slammed my head against Dead Money all day. It's an incredibly frustratingly designed thing. These are the first that I've never. So, you've never played this before. This is your first time, right?
Yeah, I have not touched any of the New Vegas DLCs.
I have also never played these before. When New Vegas came out, I think I've said this on the show before. New Vegas came out. I played the game in that first week and never played it again. Tried to a couple times, but the DLC was not out when I played it the first time. So this is both of our first attempts at checking this thing out, and it sounds like you had a bad time. Do you want to maybe give us a big overview of what's going on here, and then we can start talking about some nitty-gritty, because much like the other DLCs, it's pretty short, or the DLCs for Fallout 3, I guess I should say. It's short, it's self-contained. We can talk about some big schematic stuff, but, there's not a lot of play-by-play to most of these in the way that there's play-by-play to the main games.
Mm-hmm. So the interesting thing that I noticed while playing this, kind of big picture, is that if we try to sort of parallel Dead Money with the first piece of Fallout 3 DLC, which was Operation Anchorage, there is a strange kind of resonance between them in that both of them are sort of built around the idea of taking the current Fallout game engine and trying to make a different type of game within that engine. So, for instance, Operation Anchorage, as we talked about back in that episode, was kind of what if we use the Fallout 3 engine to make a then contemporary Call of Duty or Medal of Honor military shooter, right, set in the Fallout universe.
Mm-hmm.
This particular piece of DLC decides to make, yes, what it does is it makes the game a survival game, quote unquote. The intention from the designer's perspective was to make it first a horror game, then a survival game, but then it ends up being mostly survival, and this is something that is talked about even in the write-up that I read. But really what this boils down to, in practical terms, is that it's a Fallout New Vegas map with a bunch of intensely frustrating artificial barriers inserted into the normal course of gameplay. that makes it more challenging or hardcore or whatever, and in fact is mostly just deeply frustrating compared to what it is you get from putting yourself through it.
I think that parallel there is really appropriate because like it creates this little pocket universe and says like, hey, without all the supplies or anything you've accrued from the main game, come play in this little pocket universe and like do this separate, adventure. It's before talking about any specifics, I think we should lay out our cards on the table.
Okay.
Do you think, before we're talking about plot, before we talk about any of the characters, before we talk about any of the actual mechanics of how that works out, do you think it is successful at doing that thing, which is creating its own little game universe that has its own goals and then pursues them, for the player?
Weirdly enough, yes. Like, I do think that this does a good job of being a kind of little standalone story and in sort of a standalone location. But whether or not it's actually good is another question entirely.
Yeah, that's exactly where I land, which is that I think this is such a big swing, like an impressive swing too, right? Not just a big one, but an impressive swing of like what. But because what we have complained about so often, especially in these DLCs, is it's more Fallout. Like in Fallout 3, ultimately, all those DLCs are like it's more of what we do in the Fallout game. Going to locations, doing things. This, at the end of the day, is kind of not more Fallout. And it's something. It's something that is not pleasurable to play, I don't think, in any way. Maybe some people really enjoy it, but I did not have a good time playing this, much like you did. But it is undeniable that, like, it's doing its own thing. And it hits all the markers it was trying to do, and it does something else with the Fallout systems and engine. It points really heavily, I think, to the fact that that system, these systems and the engine that the Fallout 3 New Vegas is built on, the Bethesda engine, is not up to the task of doing other things other than Fallout games, unfortunately, or these kinds of 3D open world RPGs. So yeah, I think it's important to put that on the table first. It's like, this is not, I think we're going to have some negative comments about this. I have some positive comments too. I think there's some parts of this that really do work, but just parts. But, at the end of the day, right, this is not like a out of hand dismissal of Dead Money. 'Cause I know some people really like it. I went into this pure open mind, having no idea about what it was, and ultimately thought that maybe it was less than the sum of its parts, but I admired the parts and how they were put together. It's almost like a Plymouth Fury and all of its parts, and when you put them all together, it runs you over and kills you. But gosh, that fender looks beautiful, huh?
Yeah, that was sort of the thing that I appreciated the most about this DLC, really, is I would say my biggest complaint about the Fallout 3 DLCs is that sort of past Operation Anchorage, really, and even Operation Anchorage itself, like DLC was basically like, here's a new map with some characters on it, and some enemies, and some weapons. Here's an NPC who's going to give you like 25% of a narrative hook that is going to be pursued 5% more in the actual DLC, and then the story will be over. And like, it just like gives you the barest thing, but really it's about poking around in these areas, and all sort of like plots are secondary. And this thing clearly has a story that it is trying to tell, and it tells it, and it has characters that it's writing. Like it has thought through the location. Like this feels like a sort of old school like adventure module for like your tabletop group, right?
Yeah, and so I think something that is going to come up here, but the reason I'm bringing this up now is that we both read Avalone's kind of what do you call it? Design justification, at kind of like post release. I from what I gather, I don't know. I didn't do any research, and maybe you did, but so after the release of Dead Money, Chris Avalone releases on the Obsidian forums, I think, right?
Yeah.
Like it's like weirdly, it's a weird place to release this, but it's kind of like a top level. Here's what we were going for. Here's where I think we hit the mark. Here's where I think we didn't, kind of thing. And kind of walks through some stuff. And I think we'll probably refer back to that pretty often over the course of this episode, or maybe at the end. I don't know when we'll do that, but because it seems like quite a few people, when this came out, bounced off of it and had some pretty significant complaints. But the reason I bring this up is that in that he very specifically says that in Dead Money he was going for something like when he was running the Van Buren tabletop sessions, when they were working on Van Buren, which was supposed to be Fallout 3, which ultimately did not end up being Fallout 3. Due to, I think, the collapse of Interplay specifically. My history on that might be a little rusty, but I think that's right. It does have this kind of feel of like, you go find all the characters and you figure out the kind of depth of the world, and then you like go do the singular objective. It feels like a tabletop one shot.
Yes,
in that way. It's got some really nice kind of narrative pinch points that brings everything back together after it kind of gets wiggly and loose in the middle. And something I gotta say at the top here too, it's got a lot of Chris Avalone narrative structures. Right? We're going back to the Chris Avalone well. There is a voice that Chris Avalone brings to products that he wrote on, and so we can think about, and I'm sure this will come up here, but we can think about Planescape Torment, and we can think about KOTOR 2. And there's a lot of that style in here, to the point where it gets a little bit overbearing.
Do you like scars and tattoos? Do you like receiving orders from angry old people?
Do you like people constantly kicking the narrative can down the road by saying, "Oh, but that time, that was the worst time, but we can't get to that now. If only we had one honest conversation here for 2 seconds, we could literally resolve the next 4 hours of gameplay."
Human nature.
Yes. And yes, what is a human being, right? What is human nature, and how do societies intersect with human nature, and all the assumptions that come with that, right? Which Avalone doubles down on in the explanation, which is very funny. It turns out some of the things that Father Elijah is saying seem to be just the things that Chris Avalone believes.
Yeah.
Or believed at the time when he wrote this. So, but we'll talk about that when we get there. Do you want to maybe summarize the big narrative thrust of this whole thing? Like what actually happens in the DLC? And then I think we can talk about like how we accomplish those things.
All right. So, how you get this DLC is you start receiving on your Pip-Boy grand opening of Sierra Madre kind of radio signal. It's this woman like urging people to come to this grand opening of the Sierra Madre casino. It marks a location on your map that's like an abandoned Brotherhood of Steel bunker. You go over there, you crawl down inside of it. And, you see like for instance, a corpse with its head missing, just lying there, and there's some blood around, and it's like, that's maybe not a great idea. But there are still signs like graffiti on the wall telling you to go to Sierra Madre. So you go down the stairs, and there's a radio that's broadcasting the message that you've heard. Some like gas, pumps out from the ceiling, knocks you out. And then when you wake up, you are outside of the Sierra Madre casino, which an opening kind of crawl. This is another interesting thing, is that the DLC here has like its own little intro and its own little outro, as if it's, a tiny version of a main game. And you learn the history of the Sierra Madre. It was this top of the line luxury resort casino. somewhere in the Mojave that was scheduled to be opened, like basically like it was like the night that the bombs fell, right? The night that the war started was supposed to be this thing's grand opening. So instead it did not open. The nuclear war happened, and some people were trapped inside, but lots of people were also trapped outside. I don't know. Everyone died. There was also like a little village around the Sierra Madre that eventually, as you poke around, you learn was a village for like where staff lived. And it was also where the people who like the construction crews who built and maintained the casino lived. It was like this little company town, and the entire area has been taken over by this red cloud that emerged from apparently nowhere. But it's poisonous, it's corrosive, and after enough time, things are still living in the town. Like these characters in kind of hazmat miner suits, like gas masks and so on. They don't seem to be entirely human anymore. And anyway, the whole point of this, right, is that when the bombs fell, the Sierra Madre's security systems all triggered and like closed off the vault, and legendarily there's still supposed to be some sort of incredible treasure in the center of this locked up tight old world casino. So it turns out you, the courier, have been kidnapped by Father Elijah, a rogue member of the Brotherhood of Steel. He was the guy who was in charge of the Mojave Brotherhood of Steel, like sort of chapter or battalion or whatever, when they lost Helios 1. So if you've been picking up on this stuff in the main game, you know that the Brotherhood of Steel that you meet in the main game has recently changed hands to, what was his name? McNamara, I think. And it's because Father Elijah just basically lost his nuts and ran off somewhere. Turns out this is where he is. He is kidnapping people, putting explosive collars around their neck. This applies to you, by the way, and forcing them to help him do all the stuff he needs to do to get into the Sierra Madre and then crack the vault in the center so he can get, whatever secrets lie within. So the people that, in addition to you, you have to round up the rest of the team that he's collected. So there's a Nightkin named God and Dog, because literally it's the character has dissociative identity disorder, and has two personalities that he will switch between based on recordings that you will play for him.
Yeah, and one note, God knows about Dog, but Dog does not know about God.
Yes.
It's extremely Planescape Torment.
Mm-hmm. And he has his name carved in his chest with scars.
Yes. Well, God talks in this voice. He talks in the narrator's voice, and he knows everything, just like that big creature at the end of Planescape Torment. It's such a conceptual retread of someone taking another bite at the apple in some ways, right? Of all right, I'm gonna sink this shot again, right? Where the hand and the mind do not know what the other does. And yeah, you're right. There's this scarification thing and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Then the second person that you have to round up is Dean Domino. He is a ghoul, but pre-war he was a lounge singer who was scheduled to play at the Sierra Madre, and he's just been skulking around the company town ever since. And you eventually find out that the reason for this is he had a grudge against the guy who built the Sierra Madre, a dude named Frederick Sinclair, and had some sort of plan to take him out. And God and Dog, by the way, are also basically the people that, or Dog, most specifically, is the person who kidnapped you because he's basically been enslaved by Father Elijah, because he is a first generation Nightkin. So he is sort of psychically broken from having lost the unity with the Master way back in Fallout 1. So that's going on. And then the third character you have to grab is Christine. She is a woman. You find her locked up in an auto dock. And when you get her out, she has been all chopped up. She has scars all over her throat. Her vocal cords have been removed and she cannot talk to you anymore. But it turns out, because eventually you get her some new vocal cords, it turns out she is a also a member of the Brotherhood of Steel, particularly I think it's called the Circle of Steel, which is kind of like an elite sort of scouting or like assassin force. And she was specifically assigned to track down Father Elijah and take him out before he got his hands on whatever is in the Sierra Madre. So you have all of these characters and you do various things with them. Like you get to know them as you're, accomplishing all these silly little tasks for Elijah. Like you have to take this person to this part of town and leave them by these switches so they can throw these switches when the other person throws this switch. And then you can like open the doors and blah, 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 blah. You get into the...
Yeah, because they have to do like a big gala sequence.
Yeah, you have to like basically there was like an opening gala that was programmed for the Sierra Madre's grand opening, and it was like tethered directly to the doors unlocking. So you have to get the doors open. You have to like redo the whole gala sequence.
It's some real video game bullshit.
Yeah. And if it's also not
like,
clear, like it's BioShock bullshit. Like...
Yes, yeah, that's the other thing to add. Like, this is a tabletop one shot stapled onto a 3-hour version of BioShock. Mm-hmm. It even has like the districts.
Yeah,
like you go to the whatever, I forget what it is.
The police station, the clinic, the residential district. There's a gift shop. Like.
Yes, and then you have to fight like inhuman, warped people. They're literally called abominations, in the middle, who have been like so transformed by this location and by this like gas that's around called the cloud. They've been so transformed that they're like inhuman, and you just have to like fight them. And you have to fight them differently than you would fight any other enemy, because if you kill them without destroying their bodies, they just come back to life.
Mm-hmm.
Like immediately. So yeah, you're right. Like it is like such a Bioshock. And Father Elijah, of course, for 99% of this thing, only talks to you through your Pip-Boy and through the kind of like a big visual register thing.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, extremely Bioshocky.
Yeah, so the sort of end of the story then is you get into the Sierra Madre. All of your cohorts are also there. Elijah tasks you with tracking them down and taking them out or whatever, because he wants you to kill them now. You either do or don't do this. This is where kind of, the famous Fallout choices come into play. But you basically learn, I learned, I don't know how this worked out for Tonk, that what happened was that Dean Domino had this grudge against Frederick Sinclair, who had, the reason was, Sinclair had lost a bunch of money over like the previous decade before the war, but had always remained optimistic. This is literally like Dean Domino's motivation, is that this guy gets a bunch of bad breaks and like remains positive and like continues to succeed. And that pisses Dean Domino off so much that he arranges with, this woman named Vera Keys, who's another lounge singer, a starlet, as she's consistently called. He arranges with her to get Sinclair to fall in love with her, which he does. He then basically builds the Sierra Madre as like a sort of like a bastion, right, or bower for her and him specifically, right? This like high security casino vault that should withstand the nuclear war that he certainly feels is coming, it turns out. And then he discovered that Dean and Vera were working to double cross him. So then he set up a trap for them in the vault to trap and kill them when they inevitably betrayed him and went down there. But then he had a change of heart because he realized that Vera was actually being blackmailed by Dean into helping him. So then he goes down to like reset that trap, but that's also when the bombs fall and he like dies and or gets trapped in the vault too. It's a little unclear exactly the order of operations there. But all of this is sort of like stuff you discover. You figure all this out. And then Elijah also like beams in once you've reached the vault to tell you what his plan for this whole thing is, which is basically, he has this impermeable fortress, right? The citadel. And there's all this like weird, wacky technology that Sinclair had access to that he got from a place called the Big Empty. Which is a place that will be going in a later DLC, but like some sort of scientific research facility that Elijah came through, and that's how he found out about the Sierra Madre. So like one of the things they have are like vending machines. Again, very Bioshocky, but you like put chips into the vending machines and you can get all sorts of crazy crap, and you can like reprogram the vending machines. They're like, it's sort of implied that they're like 3D printers or like matter assemblers or something. Anyway, Elijah's like, if we could control this, and then if I could control the red cloud, then I could just control all of the Mojave, and I could send the cloud wherever I wanted to like destroy, people who are, I don't know, getting out of line or like using technology in the wrong way. And you either like you make some sort of choice in response to this plan, and the fate of Elijah himself, and then the DLC is over.
Yep. Oh, Michael, it's a little ad break here in the middle. We're going to start doing ad breaks in the middle of the show.
Hey, it's me, Ad Break Michael.
Uh-oh. Oh, let's see. Hold on. We got Cowboy Michael. We got Dark and Gritty Michael. We got Ad Break Michael. We got Michael Prime. Oh, we're going to end up with... there's probably going to be a lot of Michaels here by the end of this. But, yeah, Michael, where can people find you on the internet?
Well, if you want to see anything I have to say on the internet, you can find me on twitter.com @WarrenIsDead.
You can, of course, find me at C. Kunzelman, and you can follow everything that Ranged Touch is doing at Ranged Touch. Here's the thing, y'all. This is a show, and all of our shows here at Ranged Touch, they only proliferate. People only hear about them. People only get interested in them in two different ways. Number one, the algorithm. Here's the thing. If you want everyone to know about the show and you're watching it on YouTube, go ahead and leave a comment. Go ahead and hit that like button. Go ahead and hit subscribe to the channel if you haven't done that already. Those are easy ways, really convenient ways to get more eyeballs on the channel, because the good old algorithm will push it to people and they'll see episode 49 for some reason and hopefully go back and start at episode 1. And if they don't, that's fine too, I guess. Welcome if this is your first episode. Congratulations. You've got a lot of backlog to get through if you want to know the whole story. But the other way that we do this is through word of mouth. You should tell people about this. If you enjoy listening to this, and there are hundreds, perhaps even thousands sometimes of you who enjoy this show, if you could just do us a big favor and tell one other human being about it. That literally does increase the number of people who listen. Every time we say something like this, we get X percentage new listeners, sometimes like 10% more listeners. So it really actually seriously works. If you enjoy the show and you're in some sort of video game Discord, or you got a work Slack channel that you can just spam into, or you got a whole hallway full of people that, interns in cubicles, you can just scream at them about the show that you love, do all of that stuff. That would really help us out. And of course, it is all funded by you. We only have time to do this, and we only have the capability to do it because of Patreon support. Patreon.com/RangeTouch. All of these links are down in the description below. You can support us for any amount of money per month, but $3 per month gets you this show as an RSS feed if you'd rather listen to it as a podcast and not check it out on YouTube. And it also gets you a bunch of other cool stuff. We have a lot of different ways that you can support the show. And soon we're going to be launching a higher tier level that gets you access to some special stuff, additional Let's Plays and things like that we think you'll really enjoy. So go to patreon.com/rangetouch and see what's going on there. Ad break, Michael, you want to take us out of this ad break back to the episode where we're talking about dead money?
Tell your friends that Ad Break Michael sent you.
Hashtag ad break, Michael. Hashtag hashtag reader supported. Hashtag made with love. That's what happens.
Mm-hmm.
You get attacked by a bunch of holograms.
Yep, holograms that are impervious to all damage.
So how long would you say this took you to do?
Total playtime, probably about 7 hours.
I did this in 3.
Wow.
Yeah, and so that's something that is going to be interesting. This is why I told you, before we began recording, I said I'm not burning pod, Michael.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to do this because I think I similarly found it very frustrating. I had to reload a bunch of times. I had to just die a bunch of times to figure out where things are coming from.
Yep.
And like what is killing me. Like that definitely happened. But generally, I made it through it pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
and I wonder why that. I wonder what the difference is, which we'll find out. So let's talk a little bit. You just mentioned it, but let's talk a little bit about specifically environmental hazards, because this is Avalone says in the kind of post game review, right? The Monday morning review. He says a couple different things. Number one, this was intended to be a horror experience that ended up becoming a survival experience. And he says that's okay, because ultimately survival is like a subset of horror and blah, blah, blah. Real Stephen King vibes there of like, whatever I say, I was right the whole time. But the way that comes out or the way that functions is that the villa in particular is heavily trapped. So there's traps everywhere. It's dark as hell, so you can't see any of those traps. I died so many times to walking over things that broke my legs and killed me. That was very common. But so it's dark. There are environmental hazards that just eat your HP. The cloud, if you get near it, eats your HP. There are enemies, like we talked about before, these abominations that if you kill them won't necessarily stay dead and hit really hard. They can throw gas grenades at you, essentially. They're like, little bits of cloud that explode and they hurt you really bad. They can throw spears at you, which hit really hard. And then one of them has has a melee or like a fist weapon that is a bear trap.
Yeah.
And it punches you and hurts you, right? So like they all hit pretty hard, even for, I think I was level 22 when I started this, and they were hitting pretty hard. So there's that. The entirety of it is kind of set up as like a rat's warren in some ways. There's lots of doubling back. There's lots of like figuring out, do I need to go to the roof or the basement of something? Do I need to walk on rooftops? I actually think the design of it, if it had been a little less survival-y, would be really cool, because it's doing level design in a way that just the rest of Fallout New Vegas isn't. It's asking you to think about these 3D spaces as 3D spaces in pretty cool ways. But the negative downfall of that, or like the problem with all of that, is it's confusing spaces with all this other kind of stuff that is constantly sapping your resources in it. And the only way to get more health, I guess there's a couple ways to get more health in a general sense. One is to pick up Sierra Madre casino chips and then turn them into those like auto, Matter printers that you were talking about to get like mac and cheese or whatever. And then eat that, which gives you very little health. Or taking huge amounts of radiation damage by drinking irradiated water that you can find in bathrooms or whatever.
Also, you can sleep. However, you will find beds constantly, because this is an entire little town. You will be constantly finding beds. You're constantly walking through ruined bedrooms, and you cannot sleep on any of the beds that you find. It will always say you cannot rest here. The one place you can actually sleep in a bed that you can find is in the police station, which is like one of the first places you're told to go. So if you're me, you spend a good part of this game like doing your little mission, getting the crap kicked out of you, and then backtracking to the police station to sleep.
Oh God. Yeah, I tried. I didn't do that. I tried very hard to like cobble together things. I ended up like highly irradiated at some points. At that last marker before you just die automatically to radiation poisoning. Because I wasn't doing that backtracking to the police station. I was just drinking water wherever I could find it. And so it's really pulling on, I think that is a broadly successful survival experience. But there is no tension to it.
No.
There is no like survival horror kind of vibe to it, because the stakes as they are laid out are very clear. I need to walk into an area and figure out what's there. It will kill me. I will reload my game from the area I was just in, from my quick save from 2 seconds ago. I will then go deal with that thing. I will quick save. I will make it to the next thing, right? So there was a lot of just doing that. And for me, and this might be a difference from this might account for that time difference in completion, is a lot of it was me just looking at the map and then figuring out, all right, I need to make a right here, a left here, and then figure out what I do. And then running through it, running past all the enemies, and then getting into a safe zone. And there are actually quite a few safe zones where enemies just don't follow you to. And then standing there and quick saving and then looking at the map and doing that again. I would say I did not do very much survivaling so much as I did just a lot of running around. And in a couple places that really bit me in the ass because I couldn't figure out how to get back to where I came from. The backtracking became the problem. But the journey to the location was pretty fast because I was doing that. Mm-hmm. The one additional thing that you also mentioned here is that you've got this bomb collar on.
Yep.
And the bomb collar, if there's a radio signal around, the bomb collar will go off. But you have a certain amount of time. It's like beep, 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 beep. And it's a little bit longer than that. But, it starts accelerating and getting faster as you do it. And so you have to do this kind of work of looking for these radio boxes that you can destroy. And sometimes you can't destroy them. And you just have to figure out your way around it. I found that for 90% of these, basically up until I got to the casino, you could just run past them. Mm-hmm. If you just kept moving and did not stop when you heard the beep and just looked for wherever you could run to, you could bypass the vast majority of those. And I think that also maybe accounts for a little bit of the time difference there too, is that I was just in motion through so much of this DLC experience that it really cut down on like any problem solving I had, because I was like, making a decision, okay, there's a right and a left, I'll go left. I died. Mm-hmm. I will go right now. Okay, I've lived. Let me find some water to drink and get back up to health. And so at every turn, the DLC is putting these big obstacles in your way that I think that if you are, I don't think I played it optimally. I think if you're playing it optimally, and based on like what Avalone says in the thing, the gameplay experience is supposed to be find a little problem, figure out how you solve that problem, killing the enemies or getting rid of the radio transceivers or whatever. Then scrambling around, searching everything to find crafting materials, health items, whatever, and then taking it to those, the 3D printer things or whatever, or the crafting tables that are scattered around, and then creating better items that allow you to then progress through the DLC. And maybe that would be engaging if one did that, but I don't know. I don't think adding like 4 additional hours onto this would have made me like it more based on your experience.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is how I played the game, right? I played it very tactically. I was doing exactly, it was very interesting actually, because I read Avalone's write-up after having played, and I was like, oh yeah, no, I was like, I fit basically right into kind of like the designed groove here of going into a room, assessing the threats, like clearing that room. Like I was, taking out all ghost people that I could. That's the in-game name for the abominations. I had Dog with me because even if most of the time when I was shooting them, I would like take off a limb and that would keep them down. But Dog, if you have him with you, he will eat them. So that keeps them from reviving. But I was like clearing out rooms, clearing out locations, scrounging for things to craft materials. Which is, really kind of my own fault, obviously, because you got through this just fine without it. But like, I don't know, like it's not a type of gameplay that I enjoy, especially because, as I said, like all of this feels just so patently artificial, even within the context of the game. It's like, oh, okay, I have a bomb collar on that's reactive to radios, and I also happen to be in the one city in the Mojave where every other room someone has left a radio on for the past 200 years. Okay, sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course.
And then just like the holograms, right? That they're just like these, like so much of this stuff just feels cheap to me. It's like, what if there's an enemy that you couldn't kill? I don't know. Dead money. What if every single game was filled with enemies you couldn't kill? Then they would all be really hard. Great. You solved the problem.
Oh, we've cracked it. We've cracked game design.
Right?
But yeah, I guess that's the thing I was saying at the beginning of the episode, right? It is really admirable that it like pulls and pushes on these different things that like the game just normally wouldn't, because 99% of the time you just shoot your way through the enemy or whatever. There's not a lot of complex decision making to be made in the Fallout games for the most part. But this does ask you to do that. And it's very interesting to me that Avalone says that part of the reason for the survival design idea is that he missed from the first 2 games
this is weird.
this constantly scrounging for materials kind of gameplay. And I don't remember that being in those games.
In fact,
do you?
In fact, I remember remarking upon in our Fallout 1 series that wasn't there because there's no loot in that game.
Yeah.
There's nothing to look for.
Yeah, I just like occasionally there's stuff that, that I would think in particular locations that would like really help you out. And sometimes I guess you would find ammo and stuff like that, but it's really not. For the most part, the way that you got things in that game was like finding ways to make money and then using that money to buy things.
Yeah.
So it's a really weird kind of rose-colored glasses for a particular type of gameplay experience that I just am not sure was actually there at all. That being the rationale for why this is the way it is some pretty big question mark of like, all right, well, if that logic isn't there at all, then what are we actually doing here?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, well, so there's also the holograms that you mentioned that can't be killed.
I do
actually like.
Oh.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, the thing that's interesting to me about the holograms, thinking of this as a Bioshock, the holograms are very much the cyber ghosts from System Shock 2. Like the way that they look, and even like the way that they do like weird psychic attacks at you. That was another, like a deeper cut than Bioshock that I noticed and thought was interesting, as I guess an old school Shock stan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think of the design decisions that are in this DLC broadly, I think those are the ones that work the best for me because they are pulling on a different thing. You need to avoid line of sight and you need to try to stay in stealth. But also if you really want to just brute force it, you can run around and look for the emitter that like allows them to exist and just destroy it or turn it off. And I think that's pretty cool, too, that you can kind of race against time a little bit and you can use the level. They're placed in cool places where you can actually use the level to keep from being shot by them. I think that's... I like them the most of all of the things that are here, and I think those have the most kind of ceiling as far as what they could possibly be used to do, in a Fallout game. Whereas I don't think that the radios to bomb collar thing needs to exist. I think that's bad. I think the survival gameplay doesn't work. But I do think the holograms work broadly, in a big general sense. So you got to do all this stuff. It's a really weird like heist story because it's like a forced getting the gang back together. It's like not the way it would normally work. It's not like Danny Ocean getting all his bros, right? It's like what if you had to force a bunch of people to do shit that they didn't want to do?
Like Matt Damon wakes up and he has a bomb collar.
Would you like to play a game, Matt Damon? Can you imagine Danny Ocean with those little Billy the Puppet circles on his cheeks? He's riding that little bitty bicycle.
Yeah. through the Bellagio.
And Andy Garcia, you have a choice in front of you. Would you like to keep the treasures in your vault, or would you like to keep Julia Roberts? Well, you can only have one. You have 30 seconds. Inside of your eyeball is the key to Julia Roberts' handcuffs. What were we talking about? Oh, okay, yeah. So it's like a heist story, but kind of like not a heist story, right? It's this weird kind of both and going on. But I don't know. Do you think you described it, but we didn't really get a lot of your opinion here on it. Did it? What works here for you? What doesn't work? Was it interesting? I know you love to read all of the lore, because you like to find out where you can use those speech checks of yours. What'd you think about the story that's being told here? Because this is a much more dense and writerly text, I would say, than almost anything else in Fallout New Vegas. You can spend 10 minutes talking to most of these characters every time you have the opportunity to talk to them about something new.
Yeah.
It's pretty extensive. It's something that we also, I think, associate with Chris Avalone. I don't know. What was your vibe here?
I mean, my thought. Like this is like, yeah, you can tell this is a Chris Avalone design thing, because it starts out and you can just talk to Father Elijah for like 8 minutes, like for exposition. Like just you wake up and you're there and you can just talk to him for like, again, like nearly 10 minutes of just like talking with this NPC where he gives you the lowdown not only on this place but like so many other things. So I think that, and this also ties in, I think, tonally, right, with things like the scarification on Dog and God, and sort of the, this is not quite the right word, but like the edginess of Christine's character, right? Like locked in the auto dock and now she doesn't have vocal cords. So everything, when you talk to her, you just get like little parenthetical descriptors at the bottom of the screen of like how she's signing things to you. Which is, I think, neat, right? There's something, again, sort of tonally or about like sort of the pitch of everything that is a little like eye rolly for me. But at the end of the day, as mentioned, I love me a shock game. I love me a story about a vast, luxurious place that has been sealed away and filled with horrors. So, you know, in general, I love the tone and the atmosphere here of the Sierra Madre itself, even though I think the ghost people are kind of a huge whiff in terms of enemy design. I like the idea of them because there's this implication that, like, they're not, I mean, you see they're abominations, right? They're not like they're called the ghost people, but they're not ghouls, right? They don't, it's unclear if they are like human beings. It seems like they are some weird mutation caused by the cloud that like grows up and like fills out these miner suits with the gas masks and everything, because they don't always move like people, right? They don't move like they have like a skeleton in there.
They move like the dude with the frames missing from Little Hope.
Yeah,
that we play.
Yeah. So I mean, you know, there's some cool things here. I don't think that I agree with Avalone in his write up that this game doesn't succeed as horror, because it stops being scary once all of the survival stuff gets surfaced. It just becomes very tedious. There's like, you know, like it's like, oh, I would be scared if I also just like didn't have to worry about all of these other stupid artificial hazards that I know are going to kill me instantly, and I'm going to have to like brute force my way through them. Anyhow, like tonally, I like a lot of the stuff here, and it ties up, right? This is a story with an ending. I think that's interesting, right? We managed to get like a beginning, a middle, and an end here, kind of with these characters, in the small amount of space of a DLC. So I think that's cool.
Yeah, so I'm curious how it worked out for you. So, you know, you have these 3 characters that you can interact with, and they each kind of have a different connection to Father Elijah, right? Like you were saying, Dog God is enslaved. You know, the Father Elijah has used his psychic attachment to the master, like his need for the master, and just supplemented it with himself. You know, and so is just forcing him to do things. And you can, you know, with all these characters, you can make choices across all of your interactions with them, where you can say, you know, be nice to them basically, or be mean to them, or be cruel to them. And then that has effects for like later on in the thing. So for example, for me, for all of them, you recruit them and then you place them for that gala. And for each of them, there is a way to place them for the gala that is like nice. You know, it's encouraging them to do that. It's like making it easier and possible for them. And then the other side of it is there's one that's just like pure, pragmatic, sharp violence. And it's actually some characterization for the courier, you know, for the player character, that is not really represented in the rest of the game. Some of the things that you can say to these people are like not things you can say to basically anyone else in this game. And it feels really weird. There's a edge of cruelty here that is not really present in the courier anywhere else. And I'm assuming that will exist throughout the DLCs, and that's going to be interesting to kind of keep track of. That what are the ways that I as a player have to characterize myself in these. But so you can do that. And so what I ended up having to do, but this is based on like different checks and things like that you can do, or different things you can do for them. So for her name is not Veronica, Christine. I had her confused with the other Brotherhood of Steel person. With Christine, you can choose to lock her in a basement with an elevator and force her to like manage the power station or whatever. Or you can go do like a little micro quest and unlock a remote terminal that allows her to do it not from the basement, and so she's not afraid. There's an implication maybe that she is afraid to go down the elevator because it's like the auto dock.
Yes,
maybe.
I got this textually confirmed somehow, though I don't remember how at the moment. But I think she mentions or signs something to you about feeling claustrophobic after she was locked in the auto dock. I think for like 2 weeks or something.
Yeah, she was in there for a while. And okay, so I did that for her, for example. But for Dean, he has to be there to like basically just short 2 wires, you know, like make 2 wires be there together. And he is like, yeah, I don't want to do this. He's like, I'm like, fireworks are gonna be blowing up, and like all these ghost people are gonna show up and beat me up. Why would I do that? Right? Like, why? And so I was like, look, if you don't do it, I'll just kill you. Like I will murder you here and now. And he like, you know, and one of the ways I could have solved it was, okay, well, I'll go clear out this whole area of ghost people. But I was so kind of pressed for supplies at that point that just wasn't in the cards really. And so I did a negative thing to him to make him do it. And for God/Dog, I ended up, he has to like throw a bunch of power switches. And I just lied to him. And I was like, hey, you stand here for just a minute and I'll go and like make sure there's no ghost people around and you'll be okay. And I just locked him in the little area he had to be in. And if Dog was in that area, then he would just do whatever Father Elijah said. And so as long as he's there and not wandered off, he'll do the job. So I ended up doing really negative things to do with these characters. So my final confrontation with both of them was like these little micro boss battles. With Dean, I had to shoot Dean, and with God/Dog, I had to sneak around and turn off a bunch of gas, whatever, like gas pipes.
Yeah.
Because he was in the kitchen, he'd flooded the area with gas, and then he was going to make his bomb collar go off. And if his bomb collar goes off, then it would blow up the whole casino. And that was actually really cool. That actually felt kind of like a Batman Arkham Asylum style, you know, puzzle boss battle. You know, ultimately I did end up also having to punch him. By the way, the knife spear that exists.
Yeah.
The knife spear has a melee special attack that's called like Wrangle or something like that. I don't know. But when you do it, it hits them and launches them vertically into the air.
Damn.
I think combined with my like perk that knocks people down. And so I was like hitting ghost people and they were just going like, woo, like flying off. And in one case in the casino, I hit them and they glitched through the roof and disappeared. So there's some funny clips of that that'll be in here. But I also did that to God/Dog. I had to like ping him into the roof and beat him up. But so I'm saying all that to say there are some really interesting ways that these can kind of shuffle out. And for Christine, I actually did hers the kind way, and so she was available and able to help me in the final kind of battle against Father Elisha. She was able to destroy some turrets that were shooting me. And that was pretty cool. But so did that work out the same way for you? Were you able to kind of get the quote unquote good ending for all of these? What's up?
Yeah. I would say it worked out basically. What's interesting is that what happened with me with Dog is, so when you free Dog has been locked up in a cell in the jail, in the police station, and you go free him. But to free him, you have to like play one of the first clips of Elijah's voice or whatever that like switches him to God, and then God is the one who explains to you like the mechanics of using them as a party member. Of like, you know, switching between the two personalities. And also God explains that he does not like being submerged within the other personality. Like neither of them likes being submerged within the other, obviously. But it's very funny where God is like, like, you could do this, and it will make me very angry, but also dog will eat the ghost people and stop them from reviving, like giving a very video games style outline of like, the cost benefit of using either one in your party. I was just like, I don't know, man. You seem like you don't want to have your personality submerged, but then you're following it up with your advice on like how actually having the other guy beside me would be incredibly good for me. So
yeah, the other guy's great. Yeah. He's awesome.
He's like got like 10 strength and he levels to you. He just like obliterates ghost people.
Yeah, he also cuts them constantly. Did you get that? Where he was constantly uppercutting and their heads were flying off? It was very like, great horror survival experience you've crafted here with the giant super mutant who runs around and uppercuts people's heads off all the time. Really perfect.
What happened with him then is that I took Dog over to those switches, and he was like, I don't want to stay here because it's scary. And I could have done what you did, which is lie and lock him in. But I was like, no. So I switched him over to God, and God was like, hey, I know what we're doing here. And I'm like, yeah, here, help me. And he's like, no, you switched my personality after I explicitly told you not to do that. So I'm not going to help you. And I was like, well, crap. So then what I had to do is I had to go out and kill like 2 ghost people and get the meat and then give him the meat so that he could that's the condition under which he would do this, is that if I fed him so he could continue to keep Dog down, then he would do this. So then I run into them in the casino, which it's basically the same as you just described. In my case, sort of specifically what's happening is that both of the personalities are like trying to emerge at the same time. And so he's constantly like, he's walking around the kitchen, like talking to himself, like switching back and forth. And I turned off all the gas, and then I started dialogue with him, where I basically talked Dog into realizing that God was himself. And then the personalities merged, and when they merged, for whatever reason, it completely like wiped his memory of everything that had happened up until that point. So he didn't really remember me. He didn't remember Elijah. He had no idea where he was or what he was doing. And I was just like, yeah, like, get out of here. Bye. And so he's like what the ending narration ends up calling the new voice, who is neither God nor Dog. Leaves.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow. Watch out for that poison cloud out there.
Yeah.
It eats your flesh.
So then Dean Domino, what I did with him is what he wants is basically backup. So you can activate some additional security holograms around him, and I did that. And that means that when I met him in the casino, he is like sort of locked backstage, because that's where the casino has taken him, because that's where like the systems like biometrics have him like scheduled to be. And I helped him escape from that and shut down some of those security holograms there, and learned a bit more about sort of the backstory with him and Vera Keys and Sinclair. So that was a happier ending. And then my ending with Christine is probably the same as yours, because again, it was, I kept her on my side. I actually accidentally like did her extra thing. I didn't realize that I had opened up that remote terminal for her, or rather, like, I knew I was doing that, but I thought it was what I was supposed to do. I didn't realize it was the optional thing. So she was also on my good side.
So what is your so ultimately only Christine like has an impact on the final confrontation then?
I don't know what God or Dog does, but what can happen is that if you've kept Dean and Christine on your good side during if you fight Father Elijah down in the vault, then Christine, I think, will hack into like the turret system that he's using and shut that down. And I think Dean does something with the bomb collars, but I don't remember what. But they will like beam in over the radio, and they'll be like, "Hey, kid, blah 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 blah," and then help you out. But I didn't fight Father Elijah, so.
Yeah, so what that's interesting. So you get down to the vault at the end, and there is you kind of like walk through the like the plotty part, but you get down into that vault, and it's revealed that like this was a vault that was meant for Vera. And it was basically like, hey, hope you come here and chill out, because if you do that, you will live forever, and someone will come get you eventually.
Yeah.
because I set up an emergency broadcast signal, and that's the signal that like is bringing people to the Sierra Madre. And so like good luck there. And so for me, what happens is like Father Elijah shows up, and I am trying my damnedest to do literally anything other than fight him. I'm like trying to sneak away. Obviously, I don't have a lot of like sneak capability, right? But I did find the assassin suit that gives you +10 sneak, and so I was like trying to do that. And I even like looked it up. I like looked up the mission like on the wiki to see like, is there some other way for me to do this other than what I'm doing? And I just couldn't get it to do anything other than like trigger the fight. I couldn't get my positioning right. I don't know what was happening. I was having some issues with it. And so I eventually just ended up beating him up and running away. But, you know, I got a little bit more information. There's something really interesting that I think is going to get paid off in the other DLCs. There's a lot of breadcrumbing here narratively. It's pretty clear that they're thinking of these DLCs as they're coming out as like one story, because we get this thing from Christine where she talks about how they were both in the big Hold on. Father Elijah went to the Big Empty. She was also at the Big Empty with another person called the Courier. Father Elijah left her for dead there somehow?
He like trapped her in like a security system or something like that.
Gotcha. And the Courier maybe got her out, and then she lost track of him. And so this is both like this is kind of but then she talks about how she knew Father Elijah from even before that too, and that's a big question mark for me. There were like intelligence checks or perception checks I could make there, and I just didn't have the skills. So maybe you got more of that. But I'm constantly getting these little pop-ups. They're like 3 of 5 information about the next DLC, essentially, right? Yeah. It's like learned about, narratives to come or something like that is this thing. So like they are gamifying the learning about this other stuff. And so I'm assuming, and I literally don't know, and I haven't looked it up, but I'm assuming that either we're going to go to the Big Empty to like see some of this other stuff, or we're going to also see this other Courier maybe, because we've already heard about an additional Courier in other parts of the game too. And I don't know what's up with that, and I didn't get much more information than that. So it seems like there's this kind of like shadow discussion happening that Tonk just doesn't really have the capability to get into. Real Chris Avalone, I don't know if this is uniquely his fault, but this keeps showing up in his games where the way that if you play as a predominantly strength-oriented character, you just don't get to the narrative, right? Like, you just don't get to play with the story because you don't have the skills that allow you to access it. Great job. This is something in Mages and Murder Dads where we've talked about, the kind of biological determinism of the intelligence score. That it's just like, hey, that's what's going on, and that's what you get. We talked about it in Fallout 1 and Fallout 2 too, but I'm thinking specifically about my experience and Danny's experience and the difference between those things in Planescape Torment. But I don't know. Did you get any more of that, or is that basically what you got as well?
Yeah, I got basically the same amount of stuff as you. Connected the Courier with the Courier that we heard about back in the main game, who was supposed to take the platinum chip that ended up getting us shot, and they stepped out. It's like, parsimony tells us that this is probably the same Courier. So I know more about Christine, but I can't remember if I got it in the game or if it's just stuff that I've internalized from reading. But she was actually lovers with Veronica, the party member who is a Brotherhood of Steel scribe that you can get in the main game and that you met briefly. And their sort of backstory is that Father Elijah actually broke them apart, right? Sort of interceded and was like, no, this relationship is inappropriate for whatever reason. And I think it's sort of suggested that really, like, the reason he broke that up is because he really liked the way that Veronica was kind of dedicated to him. He's maybe a bit of a megalomaniac is Father Elijah. So there's sort of that going on. And then just the other sort of like big, quote unquote, piece of story that I forgot to mention is that you find out all this stuff about the Villa, which is the name of the village outside of the Sierra Madre. And specifically, like, all these things that you read on the terminals that get you all the backstory and lore there. What it boils down to is Sinclair hired a bunch of construction workers and contracted out to build this villa around the Sierra Madre. And he only paid attention to the Sierra Madre itself. So the contractors on the villas were just like cutting corners constantly, meaning that everything was poor quality. And this is where the red cloud comes from. Something about the ventilation system that they installed like keeps consistently failing because it wasn't like, one, it wasn't installed correctly. And two, so much of this technology appears to be coming from some sort of outside source that is, I think Christine maybe mentions this. The like a lot of like these holograms and things like that is like big empty technology. So whatever's going on in the big empty has a direct effect on this sort of stuff because Sinclair is the first person to successfully implement like combat holograms or something. So I got that. And then how I took out Elijah was you find out that even though Sinclair tried to disable the trap for Christine, he still left it there for Dean, thinking that if Dean gets into the vault, then I can trap him forever. So I just left that trap set, and I got Father Elijah to come down. I like dared him to come down and fight me. And then when he did come down, I snuck around the room, got in the elevator and left, and he got trapped in the vault.
Damn.
Yep.
Because yeah, you can, it's built as a trap. Mm-hmm. So once you do that,
And I, for the record, I had to do that a couple of times because, yeah, it just kept failing. There's something up with like the pathing or the flagging on that particular, because it's like a little optional thing, right? You can either fight him or optional, like sneak out and get him trapped. And there's something like not clear that the game is not communicating, or like something that didn't get programmed out that makes it, like I said, I had to do it, I think maybe 3 times because it just, the objective kept failing. Like he kept seeing me or something.
Yeah, there's some weird timing issue with like what he can see and when. And I think maybe he can see through either due to some angles or something, or maybe like the size of the player model and maybe his elevation, which is, I think, slightly above you when he comes out. I think he can see more than we think he can see. And on the wiki, it says that for if he sees you at any time, if you're detected at any time, it's just over. You know, it won't work. So I don't. Yeah, it was tricky to do. I'm glad you were able to do it. But yeah, I think it's interesting in you know, broad strokes. I think there's something really fascinating about this thing and the way that it like is doing a story first, you know, Fallout thing, which that's a weird thing to say, but at the end of the day, I think all of the gameplay here is in service to delivering a narrative experience, and it's about giving contours to that narrative experience. And, like, these are narratively weighty games. You know, I would never say that, like, the Fallout games don't have heavy story, but I would say that, like, the vast majority across Too Much Future of gameplay time that we have is not dedicated to, like, reading or thinking through narrative implications or, like, the way we treat characters. It's to, like, fighting ghouls or whatever. And especially from Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas. And I think I can confidently say that it's maybe about half and half here. You know, there's a lot of edges here that are uncomfortable or like bad as far as like gameplay, you know, experience, but they're in service to thematics and narrative goals in a way that just that's not really what's going on in these 3D Fallout games. And I think that's interesting. And I think that's actually something that comes back in Fallout 4. You know, I think we are going to have, especially after playing through these games in kind of order, we are going to have an extremely interesting time with Fallout 4. I think I'm going to like that game a lot more than I did when it came out originally. And I think, because you've never played it, I think you're going to find it really fascinating, even if you don't like it. I think you are going to find it very interesting, because I think some of what's interesting to me is that the parts that we have felt like are highlights of Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas show up more often in Fallout 4, or maybe a little bit more thought out. And I'm actually, it is strange to me I don't know. We'll talk about it when we get there. I think there's a lot of like big top level capital letter stuff that happens in that game that makes people who are fans of Fallout New Vegas kind of cringe at it, and I think that's appropriate. But I think that there's a lot of stuff happening below that top level that's very similar to Fallout New Vegas, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's been 3 or 4 years whenever that game came out since I played it last. Maybe that is just me, and I'm just remembering the high points from that, but. Especially given these DLCs, I think that they learned more lessons from New Vegas than maybe people suggest often. But so, what's the next DLC?
The next DLC is Honest Hearts. We will be going to Zion.
I haven't played it. Yeah, I think this is the one that people talk about all the time, right?
Yes.
As like the highlight of these.
I would, yes. I mean, I hear about it as both a highlight and as this is the point where Fallout, more than any other place, throws you into the whole tribal situation and sort of questions of tribalism and indigeneity in ways that I think might get extremely messy.
Well, yeah, the reason I say that is that, the number of times I've heard someone mention outside of our own Discord dead money is 0. I've never read a conversation about this or seen anyone talking about it. The number of times I've seen people mention Honest Hearts, both really positively in the past and then kind of negatively most recently, over the past 2-3 years. I think there's been kind of a reconsideration of it, it seems like. That's like all the time. So... okay, I'm interested in it. I'm curious about what's going on here, and we'll get right to it. I think that's it for this episode.
Until next time, war never changes, but Fallout sure does.